All right. And welcome back to The First is the Worst, the podcast meant for authors who are in the querying trenches, the writing trenches, or who just seem to have a hard time with your opening pages. I have here with me our special guest, Rachel Rosen. Rachel, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Rachel A. Rosen. I'm the author of Cascade, which is my first book. Oh, that's going in and out of focus. And Blight, which is the sequel. Woo! As well as the Sad Bastard Cookbook, Food You Can Make So You Don't Die. I'm based in Toronto, Canada, otherwise known as Toronto. And I'm also a teacher and a graphic designer and the co-host of the Wizards and Spaceships podcast.
You port, God, that's the French. You wear many, many hats.
I do, yeah. I can't turn it off. I have to always be doing something, and if it's not writing, it's gonna come out some other way.
So there's always some sort of creative process going on in your brain.
Yeah,
All right.
unfortunately, to my detriment and to everybody else's sometimes.
All right. And when did you first publish Cascade?
Yeah, it came out in June of 2022, so sort of the tail end of everything being locked down here.
Yeah.
But I was working on it for quite a while. I think I started writing it around 2015, the earliest
Oh,
drafts,
wow, okay.
and probably really seriously around 2018, 2019 in its current form.
All right. Wow. So that is a while to work on a book. And what sparked this particular book, this particular passion project?
It came out really a lot about the political situation that was going on in around the mid 2000s here in Canada, and in particular, what I saw is the rise of the far right, not just in terms of neo-Nazis marching in the street, although we had that too, but in mainstream politics and this. Idea that immigrants are a problem and even are kind of more like liberal or left wing parties seem to agree on that. And yeah, so it sort of came out with frustration with that, frustration with a lot of inaction on climate change, and just my own experiences of trying to do good things and make the world a better place while working in a bureaucracy that's like very moving and not particularly adept at responding to it.
So this is very much a current times project.
Yeah, yeah. This is my angry big epic. I think probably some of my projects that I have lined up for after I finish the series are going to be like a little bit smaller stakes, but this is my big shouting at the world series.
And I think every author needs at least one of those. I mean, how else do we get attention?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so you published through a smaller press, correct?
Yes, my press is Bumble Puppy Press, and they're based out in Ottawa. And essentially, I went through the process of trying to find an agent. I didn't try that hard, to be honest. I was just getting rejection after rejection, and it was getting frustrating. And I used to work in publishing before I became a teacher, so I did still have a lot of contacts in the industry. So I started approaching publishers who I knew, and one of them immediately grabbed it up.
Oh, wow. So you kind of already had your hand in the pot, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, not enough to get signed by anybody big, but enough that I was able to get a lot of professional advice for free relatively quickly.
And I imagine that you implemented probably at least some of that advice into your writing.
Absolutely. I mean, I rewrote the manuscript a couple times just based on what publishers had told me.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, writing is rewriting is rewriting. So. That's just for those who are new to the process, that's something I don't think they really understand. That just because you've completed a manuscript does not mean that you can just start querying agents and publishers and think that you're going to sign right away.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some really good advice out there to start with short stories, which is what I didn't do because at the time I didn't read short stories. But if you have to rewrite something repeatedly, it's much easier to do that with a short story than with a doorstopper epic fantasy novel.
Yeah, the size is so important. The word count, um, the ambition behind it as well is also important. Um, so now your a book is an urban fantasy.
Yes.
What is the category? How would you what group what age group is this for?
This is an adult novel, not because I think there's anything highly inappropriate, at least in the first one, but I don't think it's particularly interesting to younger people. It's sort of about the struggles of adulthood and getting to a point in your life where your sort of fiery passion of youth has been thwarted so many times that you're just sort of gonna give up and try and work within the system. That is where I found myself at the point in my life that I wrote this, and that's where I think a lot of the people who it's resonated for really find themselves. Um, I think a lot of like teenagers who are used to a more YA style are likely just going to find it really slow moving at first, although some of them really loved it, so who knows? Because I'm a high school teacher, people assume that I write YA. Because I'm a female fantasy writer, people assume that I write YA. But I don't really like reading YA, and I didn't when I was a teenager either. So it's really more of an adult book, which is interesting because urban fantasy, um, to the extent that it exists as a genre, was primarily a YA genre. It's sort of fallen out of favor these days in favor of, romantasy. But it was something that was geared at younger people, and I was really influenced by it as a kid. And so that's sort of the genre that I gravitate to naturally. Um, so about 6 months after I published the book, the term Cli-Fi became a thing, and I started seeing climate fiction or climate fantasy, which probably fits it a lot better and definitely applies to the series as a whole. But urban fantasy is the term that I think more people are familiar with. So that's usually the broad umbrella that it falls under.
It's interesting that you bring up Cli-Fi because when I was a teacher, I also taught on the subject of Cli-Fi. Um, but the the books that we studied left out more of the political side and focused more on like the natural disaster of, ignoring climate change or things like that. I mean, it didn't get into the nitty-gritty of how we're ignoring the signs of the impending natural disasters. And is that something that you get more into in your novels?
Yeah, that's the plot. The The first one is really about trying to tackle it from a political and an academic standpoint. And the second one is about trying to tackle it from a revolutionary standpoint. And the third one is kind of going to be a synthesis of those two different strategies. So I'm not a subtle writer. I don't think my novels are particularly didactic, but they're also not really putting that high a gloss of metaphor on what they're about.
And so, okay, so you've got the first one and you've got the second one. When should fans expect your third one?
I hope next year. I am about just over halfway through drafting it, maybe two-thirds of the way drafting it. I'm hoping to have a decent manuscript by the end of the year, but a lot depends on my other job. I have three
Yeah.
jobs. So
Oh, oof,
it
oof.
was really delayed a lot this year because I started at a new position at a new school, and that sucked up all of my time.
Yeah, I can imagine like being a writer and a teacher. I mean, I know a lot of teachers who write as well, both in the United States and here in France. And it's so hard to break into the publishing industry that it's just like a lot of people that are outside of the profession just kind of give up.
Mhm.
And so what words of encouragement do you have for those who are maybe struggling with this?
Uh, Write your passion because it doesn't pay very well, so you might as well love the thing that you're working on.
Good advice. Good advice. Um, and so you have the um, first book with you. Um, how many times did you have to edit your opening in order to get it to where it is today?
So many times. So, in very early drafts, there are versions where the story starts in a different place. There are versions where there's only one character who's a point of view character. There's first person versions of it. There's all sorts of different places where it begins and people that it begins with. And then when I settled on what was going to happen in the opening chapter, I didn't get a lot of great feedback on it. So that is still my most rewritten chapter. And in particular, the opening scene and the opening line, I rewrote maybe, a dozen times.
And you're happy with the way it is now.
Yeah, oh, for sure. By the time the line finally landed on me after lots of struggle and lots of tears, I'm like, oh, this is the only way I can start it off for a number of reasons.
And would you be willing to share uh, some of the opening of your first book?
Yeah, for sure. I'll start. So you mentioned that I could read the first line and then the first paragraph. Because of the pretentious kind of literary fiction aspirations that I have, they're the same thing. It's a super long line, but I think I can probably explain why. So this is how Cascade opens. On a blistering September morning, 4 months before Magic toured the country a brand new asshole, Tobias Fletcher stood in front of his wife, a dizzying array of choices before him, all of them wrong.
Well, that's definitely an opening line that would catch me. Um, that's I think it's witty and I think it's fun. That's kind of a fun way to open something that you know is going to be kind of darker in tone. Because we already get that dark tone just ripping a new asshole, but it's such a fun play on words that I can see why when you finally managed to get that first opening line, you were like, yes, this is it. This is what I'm going to stick with. Do you have more that you'd like to read, or is that where you'd like to stop?
Sure, I'm happy to continue. It wasn't idle nerves. Tobias had shot for AP in Aleppo, where the click of a shutter separated a clear, placid day from a maelstrom of bone and rebar. It was about preparation. Whether a combatant or not, you wore a flak vest in a war zone. Tobias was about to ride into battle against Ian Mallory, the federal government's resident wizard, and he needed the right armor, or some other means of disarmament. Tobias was a jocular golden retriever of a man, slow to anger and quick to forgive. He prided himself in moderation in all things. He ate sensibly, watched his salt, and cycled to work. He did not bring up politics unprompted. When asked by new acquaintances, he described himself as socially liberal, fiscally conservative. and switched the topic to hockey. He did not speak of magic. And I'll leave it there.
It- Speaking of hockey and just, I mean, that's so Canadian. It's so typically Canadian. It's charming. Um, Now, is your publisher a Canadian only publisher, or do they accept manuscripts from all over?
You know what? I'm actually not sure. So far, it's only been Canadian books,
Okay.
but I'm not positive about their policy on it. I think they might consider it, but I don't know.
Well, if anybody checks out their page, make sure you check out their guidelines because uh, um, many smaller publishers have a nationality guideline. So if you do not if live within their borders, they will not accept your manuscript. So just make sure you're aware of their guidelines, and that goes for publishing houses as for agencies. If you're looking for a literary agent, make sure you follow their guidelines, because if you mess up too many times, you can be blacklisted. It is possible to be blacklisted in the publishing community. So we just one of the goals of this channel is to help writers not be blacklisted. Um,
Or at
so
least if you're going to be blacklisted, get blacklisted over something fun, not because you can't read a website.
right, like I read just yesterday there was an agent who said that this she's not even open to queries. She hasn't been open to queries in over a year. She's not opening to queries anytime this year. And the same person sends her a query every single day at the same time. And it's the same query for the same book, but she's been receiving it for like 6 months now,
Oh
every
no.
single day. And I'm just like, what would prompt a person to do something like that? Why would you do that? Um, the only thing I can think of is either you're stalking this person or you really just want to make them angry.
I feel
And
like this is somebody who has a script running and they may not even be aware of it.
um, I'm not sure that I would agree with that because after a certain point, the agent would have to respond and tell them, hey, this is what's going on. I don't know if you're aware of it, but it's got to stop.
Mm,
So,
point.
and 2, 3 times afterwards, they're just going to block that email. And agents talk. So agents share that kind of information. So that's if they're doing it to one agent, who's to say they're not doing it to another?
Yeah.
Um, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about to bring up within this interview with this your interview for your books?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk a little bit more about first lines if you're interested.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes, absolutely.
I think one of the best pieces of advice that I got when I was rewriting, sadly not when I started, but at around draft 3 or 4, was that your first chapter is often a microcosm of your entire book.
Mhm.
Um, And that really helped me in terms of restructuring it. So I was setting up the central conflict on the first page. I was actually doing something with that first line that I don't think anybody's picked up on yet, but because of the setting of my novel, the future can be known from some of the characters.
Mhm.
So you have a break right in the first sentence from a deep third person point of view to a more omniscient point of view. And that is absolutely intentional because it's possible for omniscient level knowledge to be known by one of the characters, but not the character who's speaking. Um, and that took a while because I think a lot of times we sort of start slow and we want to make sure that our characters are introduced and we do a whole lore dump kind of at the beginning. And I did that as well. And I got rid of all of that for the opening chapter. There's a little bit of a lore dump sprinkled in there, but it's really about putting the, entire book in miniature in your first chapter. And then with the first sentence, you're trying to pack that book even smaller and give at least an overall sense for the reader. Who are the characters? What is this world? What are the themes? What is the tone of the book? And I think that's one of the reasons why so many writers find that first line the hardest thing to write, because you are just trying to get your ideas into a smaller and smaller form, which is another reason why if you're just starting out, start with short stories. It's a lot easier to do that kind of crafting at a smaller scale.
I think it depends on what kind of writer you are. I have had one short story published, and it was a short story that I never even intended to write. I just started writing it one day, and then I rewrote it more as like a mythological, from like a mythological point of view, a histfic kind of view, and I like I was rejected by one anthology, and so I angry submitted to a second anthology, and they accepted it. So I was like, okay, I was not expecting that. So emotions does have its place in the publishing world, but you have to make sure that they're aimed at the right target, and that you're using your emotions as a writer, as an author, for the greater good and not necessarily for detrimental reasons. Um, you know, we we as authors, we put so much of ourselves in our books, and that's one of the reasons that uh, I started this channel, is because so many authors get to that the querying stage, and either they self-publish, which is totally valid, a totally valid way. This is not to dump on self-publishers, or they give up.
Hmm.
And so many give up their dreams, and it's just like, do we really have to do that? So, this is kind of a way to keep things positive, because querying is soul-wrenching. It is like you feel yourself falling and falling and falling. Um, and you were kind of lucky in having uh, guidance along the way, because you had that previous experience in the publishing industry. What can you say for those who don't have that, who don't have um, those affiliations, when it
Yeah,
comes to
and
this?
And that's another really important thing, because writing, especially writing something long, is a really solitary process. And it's easy to just kind of fall into your own head. So it's so important to have a community of people around you. That's something that I've also been really lucky with. I have a number of Discord writing servers, and I've also, at the time that I was rewriting, I had a Zoom writing group, and I now kind of have joined an in-person writing group. And it's not just important for moral support and feedback, it's really important for morale, because these are the people who are going to believe in your story. So I think for me, that's been one of the most valuable things that I've learned since I started writing this, and definitely one of the most rewarding parts of it, because writing friends are the best friends. They just really get you, because they know you through the part of yourself that is like the most personal and the most vulnerable. So I would say find a writing community. It can be a really frustrating process. It can be a really tough time to find people that you click with, and it's okay if you don't click with most people. I sort of cycled through a bunch of different groups before I found folks that got what I was doing. But don't give up on that. That is really critical. And if you can, try and find people who are sort of around your level of experience or preferably a little bit above. It's one of the things that has been intimidating for me because I can be weirdly shy and I can be very fangirlish about people that I respect who are not necessarily famous. It's just like I will have read their book and it will have moved me and lives rent free in my head. And all of a sudden, I'm interacting with that person on the internet. But these are the people who are going to help you the most. I was lucky in that I had publishing contacts, but I was also lucky in that there were a couple of relatively well established and in one case quite famous authors who were willing to give me that helping hand up. Nobody would have read my book if it hadn't been for the people who blurbed it. And so, don't be afraid to reach out to the people who you really respect, even if you think like I'm just a beginner, they're not going to talk to me. Just start like a normal conversation. Don't start with, will you blurb my book? Start with, I really like this. I like what you have to say on Blue Sky. Have some kind of like a normal interaction and then see if they're willing to blurb your book.
And the blurbs are very important. The blurbs are what are going to draw the people who may be skeptical about the book. You're going to look at the back of the book and then maybe open it to the first pages. So that blurb is kind of like the key. And then the for opening pages are the way to lock them in.
Mhm.
Um, so yes, like what you said is very important. And you know what? Even if you don't have somebody famous to do your own to do your blurb, like I didn't have anybody famous do the blurb for my book, but we just went ahead and used my query letter, and I think that was just as acceptable as somebody famous doing the blurb for it. So it told the story, gave all the information, told what it needed, and there you go. That's the important thing. But I mean, if you can, obviously, don't turn down an opportunity to work with somebody else. But
Mhm.
if you can't, you're not limited either. You can still do it yourself. Um, Anything else that you'd like to bring up before we wrap up this interview?
Um, no, I mean, check out my stuff. It's not for everyone, but it's for more people than I thought it might be when I started writing. Um, get out there, don't give up hope, make those connections, engage with the world around you. That's what's going to fuel your story, and rewrite your stuff 5 or 6 times until it's perfect.
All right. Well, Rachel, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this interview. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. All right. And I would like to thank our special guest, Rachel Rosen, for appearing today on The First is the Worst. Remember, if you would like to appear as a guest author on The First is the Worst, you can email the email that is attached down below, and I will send you all the information necessary. It's free for anyone, whether you've been self-published, traditionally published, if you publish poetry, anything like that. So anything that can help out beginning writers to help along their journey, this is what this channel's for. So thank you once again, and I will see you next time. And may all your writing dreams come true.